Hello and welcome to another Bevy video. This video took me way longer than it should have to make, just mostly because I couldn't find the time. But this is a video talking about how Bevy is like faster in every update, and like why I think this is a great reason to use Bevy if you're planning on making a game. Because a lot of people get turned off by the idea that every 3 months or so Bevy does a major update, which can break a lot of your plugins and stuff. But personally, I think it is quite worth it, considering that like literally between like two updates you get like a 3x speed up from doing literally nothing. So just so that like the thumbnail's not clickbait, I'm going to explain some of the information on the screen. So basically you can see each Bevy version, and then so the FPS is this scene that you see behind is rendered in all three. It's seeded, so there's no variation from like what tile, so it doesn't spawn like a lot of tree tiles on one and and not on the others. So these should be comparable. And in 0.11, I got 40 FPS. And then 12, you get 45 FPS. And then in Bevy 13, it gets like 60 plus FPS because Bevy by default caps at 60 FPS. And I basically just kept increasing the ring until I got 60 FPS. But the issue with that is because each ring grows exponentially. Like these, like it could be like 90 FPS if I uncap the FPS. And that can be seen much more clearly with the entities below. So the entities are referring to the maximum number of entities or like of these tiles that it could spawn before dropping below 30 FPS. So the way it worked is it just kept spawning additional rings until it dropped below 30 FPS and then stopped spawning them. So hence the 30 rings, 34 rings, and 58 rings. What I vaguely remember, because again I did this a few weeks ago, is that the rings themselves are referring to in debug mode, not release mode. And then the entity count is too small of a number. I think that must also be in debug mode. But basically, like in release mode, the rings go up to like 500. Like I've actually got the results in their own file here. So like this is in debug mode. All this will be in the GitHub below if you would like to actually go look in more detail. So it can spawn 56 rings and there's 41 entities. But if I put it in release mode, before it drops down to 28 FPS, it spawns 770,000 entities. And that's 254 rings. So like significant step up as soon as you go to release mode. But I figured that release mode is like less comparable. Like the numbers are just so big that it doesn't really make comparable. And the entities is not necessarily directly comparable to the number of tiles that it's spawning, like and therefore the rings, because some of the tiles like are their own thing. Like if we go back to the picture, the like trees are a separate entity from the tile that they're actually sitting on, just because of how the scenes are spawned. But that shouldn't really affect the view. So if we go over to my Bevy and launch it, I built like a cool little thing and I'll put like the code here, like the result code here and the game over here. So I've just spent, and this is part of probably why this took so long, is a little thing that automatically generates the scene at a specific size and will then fly around it, just so I had something interesting to be showing in the background. And it's just got random like simplex noise, I think, just to generate like cool scenery. So like I say, these are all taken to stop when it drops below 30 FPS. But as you can see, like this one dropped down to 23 FPS. It's because these rings are exponential in growth. So adding one ring adds like a non-linear amount more, which means that like 33 may have been 30.01 FPS, and then 34 drops it all the way down to 27 just because of the sheer number of additional rings that it adds. But like, yeah, it's a pretty impressive. For this rings flying around thing, I had to cap the number of rings because originally I was spawning additional rings as the like the game slowed down. I would stop spawning rings, but then obviously as you flew towards the ground, as you saw from that entry scene, it would start spawning more additional rings, and that would then eventually slow the thing down, because as you fly closer and closer to the map, which is one of the big differences between 11 and 13, is the off-screen culling, I think, was added in 12, which is part of why there's a big jump up from 12. But it does mean that like as you would fly and less was visible on screen, it would start spawning more and more rings, and then you'd turn around and suddenly you'd drop to like 2 or 3 FPS because it's all out of view. And what's really interesting is a lot of this stuff if I pop over to here and just go to the Bevy engine and go to news, yeah, as you can tell, like I'm just trying to get this video made because I've been planning it for months. I started planning this video when 0.13 came out because I was going through the updates and it mentioned one of their speed ups. Like one of the sections that they do is they talk about like performance improvements that they got. Yeah, so like there's like FPS with shadows and stuff like that. Somewhere in here. And it's one of those things that like every Bevy update, one of the things you'll see is them talking about like entity optimization. And they'll always be like, oh, we got like a 40% speed up in this very niche case of entity optimization. And the reason that that's important is because I really wanted to see like what happens when you stack these updates on top of each other. Like, so the code that you see executing here, which that's weird. Okay. I've never used Windows 11's group thing like this. Anyway, so yeah, the code that you see here is exactly the same code in all three versions. The only thing I've tweaked is Bevy made some changes where like the diagnostic tools needed to take references instead of like a direct instance of the thing you're trying to get a hold. So there's like absolute bare minimum changes, which is actually why I stop at 11, is because I couldn't actually get 10 to work without like more or less breaking the code to a point of like they're not necessarily comparable anymore. And I couldn't, I think, even get like 9 to compile at all because I don't know, something was wrong with my Rust instance or something. It just wouldn't compile. But yeah, it's just I don't know, a short video because I haven't put anything out in a while. That I just wanted to go into like this concept again. All the code's going to be in the description or like link to the GitHub. So if you want to like load this up on your machine and like post your results in the comments about like what you got on the 3 different Bevy versions, there's like a branch for each one, or not a branch, like a history. So you can like revert to this to do the 0.13, which just to show you how little changes. So this was, I think, setting it up so that you can do a static, which spawns just the 100 rings, which is that screenshot in the, or not 100 rings, whatever, there's the number in the thumbnail. It spawns the thumbnail basically and sets your position so that you'll get exactly the shot from the thumbnail. And then if you call rings, it'll keep spawning a ring every frame until the frame rate drops below 30 FPS, which is why they are sometimes lower than 30 FPS, is because it's like it can spawn a ring even though it was only just above 30 FPS. And then you can go to version 0.12. So as you can see, like the just changed the version, and this is all the code that changes is just purely diagnostics code. And then to version 11, so to go from 12 to 11, it just changes that, and like literally just it changed how fixed time steps work, which is what prints out the FPS, the results down here. So if people want to like load this up on their machine, you can include your system specs and what FPS and stuff you got, just to show how powerful Bevy is. If I knew more about what I was doing, I would get things like making Bevy run on like a single executed core, or compiling WebAssembly, that kind of thing, just to like show you the range. But like the fact that with doing literally nothing but like going from 0.12, it was rendering 14,000 to be able to render 41,000 entities, like that's a huge jump in version. And then when you go to release, which makes the mesh rendering infinitely faster, which I don't think I got it here because otherwise it wouldn't. You can tell Bevy to be optimized in op level 3 even in debug mode, which then obviously causes you to get like these insane like 770,000 entities even when you're in debug mode, as long as it's not your code causing it to slow down, because this is to do with how Bevy renders meshes, and it basically being really, really slow in debug mode because of the just sheer amount of math and like all the overflow checks and stuff. So sorry for the rambly video. I don't think my patrons are hidden in this one, just because they might have been hidden in the code. I don't remember, but it's just a video I'm quickly throwing together to have something, because I haven't uploaded in like a month. But yeah, thank you to people that are contributing. This is going to be the last month of my Patreon. I think I'm going to close that now, and I'm going to pivot over to coffee, which will be announced in the next video series, which should hopefully be coming out like lining up with the 0.14 update. So thank you all for tuning in and watching to the end of the video, and I will see you in the next video.